let's look at chapter 19 homework. I've got my answer key available to look at here, and at the same time I'll pull up the Ross textbook homework. What you were to do was to translate these sentences into Hebrew from English. I think I gave you the first 8 to do. Is that right? Yeah, 1 through 8. So, are there any questions about how to do these? Or about my answers? Yes, question.
Yeah, just on 5 through 6, on 5 through 8, I mean, just to refresh my memory again, how do we know when to put the et? Because I missed the et on all of them.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so if your verb is transitive, that is to say, if it's a verb that takes a direct object, then you have to think about whether that direct object is definite or not. If the direct object is definite, then the direct object will be preceded by a form of the direct object marker or the sign of the accusative. Now, there we are. Remember, there's 2 ways to write it, either with the sere and no makef, or with the segol and the makef. Because of adding the makef, we lose the stress. It becomes closed and unaccented. So, why is there an 8 in front of mitzvati? Who will keep my commandment? Well, it's because the commandment has a pronominal suffix here. And pronominal suffixes make nouns definite, even though there's not an article on the front. Okay? If it were a commandment, that'd be one thing. But my commandment singles out the commandment as a particular one, and then that renders it definite. Okay? The next one, hanavi. Right? Where did he seek et hanavi? The object of the seeking is the navi, and notice I have an article on hanavi. So that makes it definite. I need the sign of the accusative, which marks definite direct objects. Yahweh is the object here, Adonai. Hazkartem et Adonai. Will you remember Yahweh? Okay? Yahweh is a proper noun, and proper nouns are by definition referring to specific persons or places. So that makes it definite. So I need the definite direct object marker here. And then we have lama tishboret hakli. Why did you, tishbor? Why did you break the utensil or the vessel? Here, kali has the article hey. That makes it definite. So I'm going to prefix it with a form of et. Okay? So that's why. Any other questions? Okay, so let's go over number 2. Someone wanted number 2 here. So I have the question asked was to translate into English this, or into Hebrew this English sentence. I shall lie down. So here what we have to do is find out what verb means lie down, which is what? What are the root letters? Shin, Kaf, and Bet. Okay? Now, it's I shall. Okay, so am I going to use the perfect conjugation or the imperfect conjugation for future time, typically? Imperfect. I want to use an imperfect, and what person gender number is I? 1CS. So I want to go with that form, okay? So if it helps you to do this, you can always come up with the regular imperfect, which is yishkov. Now, you might have been thinking yishkov, But there's a reason that I put the pathak here, and it's because in your vocabulary list at the bottom of page 146, the imperfect of shakav is yishkav. He's giving you the imperfect 3ms, yishkav, and it has an A-class theme vowel. Okay? Now I need to just change this 3ms to 1cs, which means I have to switch out the yod for another letter. What happens to the yod? It becomes Aleph. What happens to the Kirik? What's Aleph's preference here? That's right. Aleph prefers the Segol. So I shall lie down as Eshkav. Eshkav. And so that is what we should have here. And we do. So, is there anything else you need to know about that? Let me just make one comment here. I have noticed that with some of my students, particularly those that are into Max, that when they pull up my PDF with Hebrew pointing, the sheen is supposed to have the dot on the right. Sometimes that sheen gets moved over to the left-hand side on your computer and on your PDF. That doesn't happen with mine, and it doesn't happen with other people. So does anybody have a situation where their dot on their PDF is actually on the left side instead of the right? All right. Well, that's good if that's not the case. Sometimes I get this little weird thing happening, and PDFs aren't supposed to switch things around on you. They're supposed to be sort of permanent, right? But for some reason, we have that problem, and I don't want anyone to think that it should have been Eskav with a sin. That is a sheen. What's that? Yeah, that would be a sin. Yes, that would be a sin. Very good. Any other questions about the 1 through 8 on the A section here? If you don't have questions, I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things here. Let's take a look at number 4 for a second. And I just want to look at what the actual answer is and talk about the grammar of it, not so much how we got it, but just what we're looking at now. I have ma yichtov. Ma yichtov. First things first, you see the yod here on ma yichtov. Tell me about the dot in the yod. Why is there a dot here? That's right. Do I normally get a dagesh forte in the yod of the imperfect prefix when it's hanging out by itself? No, there should not be one. Okay, yod is not a begad kafet letter, is it? So there shouldn't be a dagesh lene in there, and there normally shouldn't be a dagesh forte when it's at the beginning of the word. So you're right. This is because we've got the interrogative ma, which is pointed with a pathak, and a dagesh forte in the first consonant of the next word. So that's why that's there. Mayiktov. Mayiktov. And then my second thing to point out is that ma means what? What? That's right. So how would I translate this? What, yiktov, is 3ms, imperfect. What you will write. What you will write. What do I have to do in English to make that good English? I have to switch the position of will, right? What will you write? I've got to put that in front of the pronoun you. So what will you write? What will you write? Now, here's a question for you. What is the function, the grammatical function of ma here? What will you write? You know what I'm asking? Exactly. It's the direct object. What's the subject of write? You. Exactly. So you is the subject, will write is the verb, and what is the direct object? You see that? So if I rephrase this in that order, I could say, you will write what? Okay? You will write what? And what is the direct object? So what I'm questioning is the direct object. I'm wanting to know, what is the direct object of you will write? And the answer could be any direct object. But if somebody gave in Hebrew a one-word answer, what will you write? And I answer something like, a book. A book. Oh, no, not a book. The book. The book. What would I do in Hebrew? How would that one-word answer look? Well, it would look like this, right? Eighth ha-sefer. That is to say, if the answer to the question, what will you write, is given, the answer that I'm giving is a direct object answer, isn't it? I will, in other words, I might omit I will write, but what I'm going to tell them is the book. And it's going to not only be articular, but it will, I would expect a direct object marker on it if it's definite, you see, because my answer is a direct object. All right, good. Now, look at number 3 here. Again, since we have these new grammar concepts, I want to just take a moment to just think about it with you a little bit. I have ha-kaved, ha-ra'av. Ha-kaved, ha-ra'av. What is the ha right here that we're seeing? Okay, interrogative, hey. So let's drop it for just a second. If all I had was kaved, ha-ra'av, would that be a question or a statement? There would be a statement. What would it mean? How would you translate it without the ha? Kaved ha-ra'av. The famine is or was heavy or severe. The famine is or was heavy. Add the interrogative hey. That converts it to what kind of question? A yes or no question. Right, a yes-no question. And put that into a yes-no question format now. The famine was heavy now becomes was the famine heavy? Or just raise your intonation. The famine was heavy. All right. And then look at the number 7. Here I have Hazkartem et Adonai. So is this the article hey on Hazkartem? No, it is not. How do I know that? Okay, so I'm missing dagesh in the Zion, which is what I'd expect with the article hey. Second reason that I would not want to take this as an article hey. What kind of word is zakartem? That's a verb. What does it mean? Zakartem.
Remember, zakar is
That's right. Tem is heavy ending, 2MP, right? So it's you remembered, or y'all remembered. So can I put an article on you remembered? The you remembered? No. That doesn't even sound normal, does it? The you remembered. So that's clearly not the article. That is the interrogative. Okay? That's the interrogative hey. So again, let's translate Zachartem et Adonai without the interrogative hey. What would that mean if it's a statement? Yeah, you remembered the Lord. Statement of fact, right? You remembered the Lord. And now when we add the ha in front of it, at the beginning of the sentence, it's now a yes-no question. How would you turn that into a yes-no question? Yeah, did you remember the Lord? Did you remember the Lord? Or leave it as a statement, but raise the intonation. You remembered the Lord? All right. Let's take a look at the translation homework now. So on to 1 through 10.
Dr. Marshall, I had another quick question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
On number 7, why is it just a patah and not the compound shabbat that was common here?
Ah, right. Very good. If you go to page 146, okay? Page 146, and it's number 2 under the interrogative hey. Before gutturals and before words that begin with vocal shava, the form marked is ha with the pathak. Okay? So let's erase this for a second, and let me just color this out. Okay? Zachartem with a vocal shava is the normal way to point the 2MP perfect form of zachar, right? The heavy endings pull the stress to the end. This becomes open and propertonic, and it reduces the kametz, zachar, to a vocal shava. Zachartem. And now I'm going to add the interrogative hey to the front of a word that begins with a vocal shava. So what I'm told here is I can't add it this way, or I'm going to have a compound shava followed by a vocal shava, right? Am I allowed to have compound shavas and vocal shavas side by side at the beginning of a word? No. So this is our red rider problem. So how are we going to resolve this? We're going to shoot out the 2 I's of the compound shava, and we're going to leave the pathak. Okay, and so that's what we in fact have. So does that make sense? You're welcome. All right, good. Now, moving on to the translation exercises, I'll pull up the Ross questions here in Hebrew, and we'll go over any of these that you have questions about. So the question here is on number 1, what am I looking at for the pointing to know whether or not I'm dealing with an adjective versus, maybe a verb or participle? So here I have kuveda, and notice that I've added a kametz hey to this form, okay? So I know that I'm starting with kaved as a form, and the kametz hey has been added to it. The question is, which kaved am I looking at? Notice that when I add the kametz hey, the sere right here does not reduce, does it? It's not a vocal shava. It stayed put. Okay? If this were a verb, what would happen to my open pretonic syllable? What do verbs do with syllables that become open and pretonic? Verbs reduce those to vocal shava. So I'm going to take this not as a verb form, but simply as an adjective, okay? Adjectives do not reduce their open pretonic syllables to vocal shava, nor do nouns. Nouns and adjectives do the opposite. They follow the old preacher sermons are long rule, which is that open pretonic syllables require a long vowel, okay? So I'm not going to take kuveda as a verb, so I wouldn't be parsing it as a verb. I would just say this is the adjective, the feminine singular adjective kaved. Okay? If I were parsing that, that's what I would do.
In what chapter did we learn that, I can't even remember what we're saying, something reduces the vowel.
Yeah, it's in chapter 8. So if you go ahead and take your textbook and flip all the way back to chapter 8, and I had you write something down next to points number 1 and 2 under 8.1. Do you guys have any little magical notes there to yourself?
Noun reduction pattern is verb reduction pattern.
Right. So the point here is that point number 2 is pre-tonic reduction. When syllables become open and pre-tonic, they can reduce to vocal schwa. What he makes it sound like is that nouns and presumably adjectives can reduce their open pre-tonic vowels to schwa. But what I told you was no. That's actually what verbs do. Verbs reduce syllables to vocal schwa when they become open and pre-tonic. Nouns reduce syllables to vocal schwa when they're open and pro-protonic, not when they're open and pre-tonic. Okay? And I gave you some additional rules, and they're on this handout. Let me pull it up for you real quick. So do you remember this handout here where we memorized 2 and 3 and then oops, Ross, vocal schwa? This handout generally applies to nouns and adjectives, okay? Are there any other questions?
So could you just repeat that once more, just so I can, so verbs reduce when?
When a verb has a syllable that becomes open and pre-tonic, it will reduce it to a vocal schwa. Let me give you an example here, okay? Let's just use pakad as our example. Pakad is he appointed, Cal Perfect 3MS, right? If I were to divide this into syllables, let me go with a different color. This would be open, that would be closed, this would be pre-tonic, and this would be tonic, right? So that's the way I start with my verb pattern. Now, the issue here is when a syllable becomes open and pre-tonic, once I start adding endings. And if I add the Kometz ending here to pakad, okay, the dalet's no longer going to close the syllable. The dalet has to take the vowel and lead that consonant because every vowel needs a consonant leading it, right? That's the way Hebrew syllables work. You never have a vowel starting a syllable. The consonant before the vowel has to open the syllable. And so the dalet's going to break up with the kof in terms of a closed syllable. And that means that now, oops, let me switch to blue here. So now the tone is over here. This is no longer closed but open. And since the tone's shifted to the left, ka is pre-tonic, right? Now, what do verbs do with open pre-tonic syllables? They reduce to vocal schwa. So it becomes pakada, pakada. Once I've done my syllable divisions and reduced everything how it's supposed to be, then if I had to divide syllables, I would now divide differently because remember, I don't ever divide to the left of a vocal schwa once it's there, okay? So I'd now have to get rid of the dividing line, and it would be pakada, pakada, okay? But that's how that schwa came there because it became open and pre-tonic, and verbs reduced that to a vocal schwa. Over here, when I added the Kometz hey, notice that this did not reduce to a vocal schwa. Why did it not reduce? Because it's not a verb, okay? Only verbs do that. If I get an open pre-tonic syllable and it doesn't reduce to vocal schwa, it's because it's an adjective and not a verb. And that's why it's deseri here. Okay? Other questions? Let's look at number 4 here. So I have Yareinu. Yareinu. Is this a noun, adjective, preposition? What am I looking at here with Yareinu? Okay, that is a verb. It's a stative verb. Good. Can I identify 3 root letters of an identifiable stative verb? Yod, Resh, Aleph. Excellent. And that means that nu is my personal ending. If nu is a personal ending, which conjugation pattern takes nu as a personal ending? The perfect or the imperfect? The perfect. The perfect uses suffixes. Right here, before root 1, I have no prefixes either. So that's also indicative of a perfect. Which person, gender, number is the new personal ending? First, common, plural. So, and then my roots are yod, resh, aleph. So here I've parsed the verb. Yod, resh, aleph, cal, perfect, 1 CP. Okay? So I can translate this now. It's going to be, the new is first common plural, so it's we. Oh my goodness, the Dukes of Hazzard are here. All right. So we, and what's Yare mean? What's Yare mean? To be afraid or to fear. Now, so I could say we feared or were afraid. Okay. Something that Ross mentions, and I mentioned this a long time ago, but I should mention it now, is that stative verbs, when they're in the perfect, could be translated past tense, but stative verbs in the perfect could also be present tense if the context is appropriate. So it could also be we fear. Okay? We fear. So we feared or we fear. We were afraid or we are afraid. Okay? And then Yirah Gedolah is using a feminine singular noun along with it. Now here's the question. What is Yirah? Fear as a noun. What is Gedolah? Great. What kind of word is Gedolah? It's an adjective. Notice it follows the noun. It agrees with it in gender, number, feminine, singular, and definiteness. Both are not definite. So what type of an adjective is this? It's attributive. So it's telling me what kind of fear, right? What kind of fear is this? Great fear. Great fear. So we feared great fear. So here's the question. Do you think great fear is the direct object? Is it what we fear? No, it's not. Okay? Rather, this noun with its attributive adjective has an adverbial function. We feared great fear means we feared with great fear. Or to put it another way, you could say we feared greatly. Okay? There are places and situations where in Hebrew a noun will be used all by itself with no preposition, and you're going to add an English preposition in order to get across the adverbial idea that it signifies. Sort of like when we learned, well, actually with number 2 as an example, Mala'u hakalim dam. The vessels are full. Dam, blood. The vessels are full blood. What does that mean? The vessels are full, or the vessels were filled. Dam is a bare noun with no preposition, but you're going to add a preposition. Were filled with blood or were full of blood. Okay? So it's the same kind of situation here. We feared with great fear means we were exceptionally scared. We were Scooby and Shaggy all over again. I'm Scooby-Doo. That was scary. So we're asked for number 5. We have kuveda ha'evan mehazaken. Okay. So question here, is kuveda the stative verb, kaved, or is it the adjective, kaved? And how do I know? The important question ends up being, what happens to this open pretonic syllable, right? Did it reduce to a vocal shava? It did not. No. So this is actually the adjective, feminine singular of kaved. So, and it just means heavy, right? So heavy, ha'evan, the evan. What's an evan? Yeah, rock or stone. Now notice that I have no verb here. Okay? This is just an adjective followed by a noun. This adjective does not have the article. Ha-evan does. This is feminine singular. What gender is Evan? Believe it or not, it's feminine singular. It doesn't look feminine singular. Okay, so these match gender, but not definiteness. So what is the function of this adjective? It can't be attributive, because attributive adjectives would have to go after the noun they agree with in gender and number, and would have to have the article. So what type of adjective is this? This is the good old predicate adjective, which means I need to add a copula that is null or missing here, right? So it would be something like, heavy is the stone or rock. Now, I now have this prefix right before hazaken. What word is this that's been added? Yeah, this is the preposition min, which normally means from. But there's another use of min, because from doesn't really work, does it? Heavy is the rock from hazaken, from the elder or old man. That makes absolutely no sense. So what's another function of the min besides separation idea? Okay, we have comparative use. Okay, so here's another question. Is the stone being compared with the elder in terms of heaviness, where I could say, heavy is the stone compared to the elder, meaning the stone is heavier than the elder. Hey, you think this elder is heavy? This stone is heavier than he is. That's probably not what's going on here, huh? By the way, that should be an A, comparative.
But in a class where we ask is if the prophet is more beautiful than Moses, it's not out of imagination.
Yeah. So there's another use of the min as a comparative min, which means to blank for someone. And that's the idea here. The stone or rock is heavy. How heavy? Too heavy for the elder. Okay? That's the use of the min here. This is technically described in some grammars as the elative use of min. To be too much of some quality for someone. All right, so that's it here. Does that answer the difficulties you were having there for number 5?
Yes.
Okay, good. By the way, why is min pointed this way with the sere? Because normally the noon would assimilate, and it would be a Keurig and a doubling dot. But the hey rejects the doubling dot because it's what? It's a guttural. And so when it rejects the the doubling dot, the curate compensatorily lengthens to a long I-class vowel, which is seri.
Dr. Marshall,
Yes.
how do you know that? I first thought that said the stone from the elder was heavy. How would you determine that wasn't meant to be that way?
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's a good question. I guess in technicalities, that is possible. That is possible. I think if the writer wanted to make sure that you understood it that way, he would have introduced asher. Oops. And then it would be the stone which is from the elder was heavy. And then you'd have to, view all that as going together. Okay? But you're right that it is conceivable that that mehazakain could actually be adjectival modifying ha'evan. Like the man from Mars, right? The man from Mars is smarter than the woman from Venus. Okay, good. Thanks for that question. Any other final questions here before we go on to the next chapter? Any final questions? Okay, let's look at number 10. So, we have yaru'u. Yaru'u, that is a verb. It's a new one we've just learned. Yod, resh, aleph. What verb is that? Yare. Good. Yare, roots 1, 2, and 3, followed by a shurik at the end. So what conjugation is this? It's the cal what? The cal perfect. And when the perfect has shurik, it's 3CP, right? So, my subject is some plural entity, either a they or an explicit noun. Do I have a plural noun over here in the context of the sentence that could be the subject? Yeah, ha'anashim. Is that men or women? Ha'anashim. Is that men or women? It's men, right? Remember, nashim is women, anashim is men. Men are taller, longer than women. Okay, so the men, yarad. What does yarad mean? Feared. Okay, so the men feared, and here's our expression, yir'a gedolah. The men feared what? With great fear. The men feared with great fear. That is to say, the men were exceedingly afraid. And then I have a key clause. What's this key indicating here? Yeah, this is indicating reason. So it's why they feared with great fear. So the men feared with great fear because lo yachalu. Lo yachalu. What's lo mean? Not. And yachalu is one of our new stative verbs, right? There's the roots, 1, 2, and 3. And again, another shurik at the end. So that's the cal, what? Perfect. 3CP. Common, plural in the perfect for they. They, now, I could translate this as they were not able. Okay? But look at what I've got. I have a form of yakol with a lamed preposition attached to something. What does yakol with a lamed attached to a noun or pronoun mean? It's not to be able, but to prevail over. Okay? So I'm going to translate this as because they did not prevail over oyevehem. Now, what's the basic noun in this expression? Oyev. What's an oyev? An enemy. But here I have oyevehem. I've got a pronoun suffix and a yod before the pronoun suffix. So is this singular or plural, oyev? It's plural. Good. So they were not able, or they did not prevail over enemies. Whose enemies? Hem is which pronoun? Yeah, it's 3MP pronominal suffix. So they did not prevail over their enemies. Okay? So that's why they were greatly afraid. Because they did not prevail. What's that?
Can you also translate that they were not able to overcome their enemies?
No. Yakolu, or yakalu, means they were not able unless you have a lamed attached to something, and then you're going to translate it as they did not prevail. Okay? We haven't learned the infinitive, but you're going to be able to use forms of yakol plus an infinitive to mean to be able to do something or to not be able to do something. But we don't know how to say that yet. So here, what we need to translate this as they did not prevail over. Okay? Let's look at number 7 real quickly. Here we have the same yare, which we just saw here, yare'u, yarethi. Who's the subject of the action yare with T at the end? That's I. That's the perfect 1CS, right? So I was afraid, or I could, remember, stative verbs in the perfect could be present. I am afraid. But we'll go with past here. I was afraid. Ki. We just saw that a second ago. That could be because, right? It could also be that. Let's go with because for a minute. I was afraid that, because Malay ha heikal. Malay ha heikal. What does that mean? Yeah, the temple was filled, or the temple was full, and then I have kavod Adonai. What is kavod? Glory. So translate that. Malay ha-hekal kavod Adonai is? Yes, with the glory of the Lord. You have to add with here in your translation when you have malay, then accompanied by what something is full or filled with or of. Okay? So, with or of. Was filled with or was full of the glory of the Lord. Okay? So don't forget that with malay. Now, number 8, I have v'haya, beginning a sequence here. Is v'haya WCI or WCP? V'haya. Which is it? It's a WCP form. Okay? It's got the regular vav. I think that's what somebody was saying there. It's got the regular pointing of the vav, and there's no nutty prefix. Okay? So this is a WCP, and that probably means that what it's signaling to us is that we have future action. Okay? We don't need to translate it. We just go to the next part. Ki tikbad ha'avodah. How can we translate the key? It could be because. It could also be what? That or when. Now, if v'haya is introducing a future time frame, it's possible that when is going to be the best way to render this. And, if you're using Old King James, and it will be when such and such happens in the future. Okay? But we're just going to translate starting here. So, when tikbad ha'avodah, when the avodah, the work, is kaved. with the imperfect. So when the work is heavy, future time, okay, what will happen? I have u zakartem. That is a perfect looking ending, but with a vav in front of it. This is another WCP, which we're going to translate as future. So when the work is heavy, you, plural, will zakar. What does that mean? You will remember. Don't translate the and. When the work is heavy, you will remember et hadavar hazeh. You will remember what? This word. These are masculine singular. Ha ha. They agree in definiteness. The word, the this, is this word. The attributive, demonstrative, adjective use there. Okay, good. So just wanted to review this WCP form since that was last chapter. We can't forget what we've learned. All right, very good. Any final questions before we wrap it up here on this chapter?
What does the I stand for in WCI? I forgot.
So WCI is an abbreviation for Vav consecutive imperfect, which is, again, it's technically a misnomer because these prefix forms that are attached with the special pointing of the Vav, they're not technically imperfects. They're preterites. They're ancient prefix conjugation forms that happen to look just like the imperfect, but they're preterites that indicate past time. WCP is an abbreviation for Vav consecutive perfect. The Vav is attached to what looks like a perfect form, and yet we're going to give it future semantics in our translation. Okay, let's stop there.